Next up, we have a safety and security report, and welcome Mr. McElroy. I'm excited to hear about this.
There we go. Thank you. President Meyer, Vice President Altman, Superintendent Hamburg, Treasurer Marshall, and members of the board. I'd like to thank you for allowing me to present to you about safety enhancements at Westerville City Schools. First of all, as I share information about our security enhancements, please note that some details must remain protected to ensure the safety of our students and staff. While I will provide an overview, certain specifics can't be disclosed publicly to prevent compromising our security procedures. So let's get started. Guess I should turn this on too. So this is our overview. So back in September 23rd of 2019, Scott Dorn gave a presentation to the board, and the title of that presentation was Safety Planning Approach. And in that, he really talked about the initiatives, the security enhancements that need to be done in in Westerville City Schools. And we have a continued commitment to that. Now, I want to talk to the board about, do you realize today that 50 million students across the United States of America got up today to go to school? 50 million. In Ohio, over 1.5 million students got up today and went to school. And in Westerville, approximately 14,500, 14.5 went to school today. 14,500 went to school today. And their families expected us to keep them safe, right? They expected us to keep them safe along with education, et cetera, but we're here to talk about safety. And what I want to talk about is in that what we've done in the district since 2019. You're aware that we've established essential elements of high quality instruction, safe and inclusive environments. WCS staff are trusted adults who develop and provide spaces that are physically and mentally safe, values diversity and student authenticity. As a result, students are seen, heard, celebrated, and are able to thrive, grow, and take risks. I applaud the district for that approach. And I want to tell a quick story that makes this so important to me. Years ago, I presented at a school district in a different state, and we talked about safety. And during that presentation, I posed a question. Now, this was a group of law enforcement, fire, EMS, teachers, principals, administrators, nurses, counselors, etc. And I posed a question. The question was, what does your perfect school look like? After I posed that question, I divided the group into two smaller groups. One was law enforcement, our first responders, fire, et cetera, in one group. And the other group was the balance of the group, teachers, counselors, social workers, et cetera. And I gave them 30 minutes to draw a picture of their perfect school. Ready, go. So 30 minutes passed, and after 30 minutes, we reconvened, and I asked each group to select one person to show us, to talk to us about their group's perfect school. First up was law enforcement. Again, police, fire, etc. Now, this changed my life. That group drew a picture of a big building, kind of ominous looking, no windows, a machine gun on top of the school, a moat around the school with a fire-breathing dragon in the moat, and a drawbridge to gain entry. Then the other group got up, again, counselors, social workers, etc., and they showed their picture. And there was a picture of a school with the sun shining on it, butterflies in the background with soft music, and the kids just dancing to music. And again, that's what changed my life. Because I realized in this role, we have to find a way to bring those two beliefs together. And that's why I applaud this essential element, because we talk about the physical and mental safety to include values of diversity, etc. That's what governs my work. So, in Mr. Dorn's presentation, he identified these safety needs: camera systems, doors and lock sets, access control, windows safety film, duress panic buttons, signage, exterior door monitoring, communications, visitor management systems, exterior lighting, building modifications, and crime prevention through environmental design. That's a lot. But this information was based on a report, a final report of the Federal Commission of School Safety and Partner Alliance for Safer School Guidelines. This was information that was listed in those two documents that school districts should have in place to ensure safety in their schools. So let's talk about these individually. First, our upgraded camera systems. We've installed modern camera systems in every school in our district. We average 25 cameras, this is internal and external, at our elementary schools, 50 at our middle schools, and a minimum of 100 at our high schools. And this is top-of-the-line camera systems that have network video recorder, the proper cabling, etc., and uninterrupted power supplies. So if the power goes out, our cameras still work. And those cameras can be monitored by front office staff, by our building principals, by our school resource officers, and others within the district to ensure that we're able to look at the internal and external movement on our properties before, during, and after school. And they've been placed in strategic areas inside and outside of our schools. Next, access control solutions. Love the pictures. But we implemented access control for security reasons. Every staff member has an ID card, an ID badge, with their picture, and we can control the access that this card has at any door throughout our school district. We've also placed proximity readers at our entry points so staff can use the proximity reader to gain entry into our schools. And if the badge is not programmed for that particular proximity reader, you cannot gain access to that specific door. Also, we've added the integrated video doorbell system. Many of you, I'm sure, have been to our schools, and if you go to the door and you can't gain access, you have to hit the doorbell, right? That doorbell system has a camera system on it and two-way audio. So our front office staff can see who's ringing the doorbell, can speak to that individual who's ringing the doorbell, and decide if that individual should gain access to our building or not. So basically, if you have an ID and you have access to that door, you can come in. But if you don't, we try to make sure that we determine who should be entering our schools. We're also in the process of adding duress panic buttons in all of our schools. In addition to that, the district has invested in a visitor management system, the Raptor system. That system helps us to monitor individuals who have been given permission to enter our schools, but we ask those individuals to provide their government ID to place it in the Raptor system so we can determine if that individual is on the National Sex Offender Database. If that individual is on the sex offender database, myself, the building principal, our school resource officer, and others receive that information, and we assist front office staff and others to determine if that person is truly the person who is on the sex offender database list. We want to determine if sex offenders are coming into our buildings. Now, sometimes we may have a false positive. To give an example, we may have an individual, for example, by the name of Mike Smith, who's born on January 20th of 1999, who's trying to enter our buildings, and there may be someone in the system with that same name and same birthday. We will still get a hit, we'll still get notified, and then the system will show a picture of that individual, and we compare that picture with the individual who's trying to gain access to our school to determine if it's he or she or not. And if not, then the system will produce a badge that they can stick on their person and be permitted to go further into our schools. Again, we're also trying to address our address button system, and we also have a visitor management system as well. Next, building and facility safety enhancements. We've installed secured vestibules in all of our schools, every one of our schools. In some of our schools, we have to change the entrance to our schools to make sure our vestibules are working properly. You see a few pictures of some of our schools. I love the bottom picture on the left where our staff have put plants, et cetera, to make it friendly, but we still are controlling access into our school. We also have installed push-button lock sets on all of our internal doors, so our classroom doors. So the locks on our doors can be locked from the inside by pushing a button, and they can be unlocked from the outside with a key. So for obvious reasons, that's critical if our teachers or others have to lock our classroom doors. We've also installed two-door locking devices, better known as TDLDs if you work in that industry. And that's for some of those internal doors where we have two doors. Say, for instance, a library. For example, the interior library door may be two doors, so we have to have the right system to ensure that that door closes and is secured. Next, our communication system. Our district has a communication tower on our property. And that communication tower governs our two-way radio system. So we have, some people call them radios, some people call them walkie-talkies, I call them two-way devices, where we can communicate in our schools. So we can communicate internally, within the school from person to person. We can communicate from inside the school to the outside of the school. Our building principals can communicate to our transportation department and back. And also our law enforcement have access to those communication systems as well. And members in this building have access to that communication system too. So we're able to communicate, again, at a small level in the building. We can communicate out to the playgrounds, and we can communicate across the city of Westerville. Many school districts do not have that capability. And we're also in the process of updating our PA systems in our schools to ensure reliable communications during emergencies. Exterior security measures. Now we're talking about one-to-one replacement of our existing lights. We've not only replaced many of the lights, but we've installed smart controls on those lights, which helps with energy efficiency, cost savings, et cetera. And many of the lights have motion detectors on them, so at night the light may be dim until something or someone walks past the light, and then, as you know, the light will brighten. Again, it helps with efficiencies. And we've added, shout out to our IT department, we've expanded our exterior Wi-Fi access points. So outside of all of our buildings, we have new Wi-Fi access points. Now, I heard the question. You guys asked me why. There's why. We've invested in the Raptor system. This is our emergency management system. This is the newest tool that we've invested in that has a mobile app for managing school emergencies. So every school employee who has a district email address can use this system, this app, on their telephone, their mobile device, on a Chromebook, and on their desktop. Now, this system does a number of things, but the two most important things are, with this mobile app, any person who has this app can activate an emergency. So if something is happening in or around our schools, and an individual has this app on their phone or on their Chromebook, they can activate an emergency. So if something bad is happening in the school, they can push that lockdown button, lockout button, etc., and that information will be communicated to all the other members in that building or those who are associated with the building, right? Also, during an emergency, our emergency management system allows us to account for all of our students. So this system works directly with our student information system, PowerSchool, where that information is uploaded daily or nightly into this system. So during an emergency, we're able to account for all of our students based on their roster. So if we're practicing a drill, or if it's an actual emergency, we can account for staff and students by utilizing this device. I feel that, in the use of this device, if all of our staff are using it and using it properly, we can definitely prepare for accounting for our students during an emergency. Behavior threat assessment. Now, remember in our essential elements, we talked about physical and mental safety. According to state law, Ohio Revised Code 3313.669 pertains to this. We have to implement a behavior threat assessment team in our schools. And it states that districts must establish policies for conducting behavior threat assessments. And we've done so in Board Policy 8400. And if you wonder what a behavior threat assessment is, I'll tell you. Behavior threat assessments are systemic processes used to identify, evaluate, and manage potential threats to safety in schools. What we're trying to do is to determine if a student poses a threat in our school. And sometimes we'll get this information about a student. It could be through social media platform. It could be information that comes to us through an anonymous tip line. Or sometimes we just hear someone saying something that we have to really address what was communicated at any grade level. Here in Westerville, the ORC states that schools must establish teams in grades 6 through 12, but we have threat assessment teams in all of our schools. And those teams are trained, and that information is reported to the state of Ohio. And those teams follow a process to determine if a student does pose a threat in our schools. We have other team members in this office and in the buildings that are prepared to help students who maybe are considering harming themselves or considering to harm someone else. Our school resource officers, better known as SROs. This district has a unique opportunity to work with 4 different municipalities. Many school districts don't have that opportunity, but we have officers assigned from Westerville Police Department, Genoa Township, Minerva Park Police Department, and Blendon Township. To start with Westerville, Westerville has assigned 5 officers to our middle schools and high schools, and an additional officer to assist with our 9 elementary schools. Now we do have a memorandum of understanding with Westerville, who will eventually provide us a total of 3 additional officers for the 9 elementary in Westerville proper, but we currently have 1 because Westerville Police is having some staffing issues, but once that's addressed, we will have 2 additional officers for our 9. So it'll be a total of 3 officers for our elementary schools, and then an officer in our middle school and in our high school. Genoa Township has an officer in 2 of our schools, in Central High School and in Genoa Middle School. And those officers have therapy dogs, Maverick and Rocky. I love those dogs. And that's a unique approach to policing because, again, they're able to use therapy dogs in our schools to help address the needs of our students and staff, not just focusing on law enforcement. And those two officers also assist with Alcott Elementary and Faust Elementary. Minerva Park Police Department has one school resource officer who works in Minerva Park Middle School and also responds to Hawthorne and Minerva France. And lastly, but definitely not least, Blendon Township Police Department has one officer who works up to 16 hours per week at Huber Ridge Elementary and Wilder Elementary. So all of our schools are covered by police. And I love these pictures, and I'm a little biased, but that first picture, bottom left, that officer, he's probably about 6'4". And it is an amazing picture to see him interact with little ones. It is a beautiful, beautiful thing. But you see the pictures of our SROs and their dogs and the interaction and the relationships that they're developing with our students. Now, we know that there is a time, and maybe there's still concerns about school resource officers being in our buildings. So what we did a number of years ago, we created a school resource officer committee that focused on our SRO program to try to enhance the needs of our students and that interaction with our school resource officers. In that, the district hired a consultant, and that consultant convened strategy meetings with our students, with our staff, and our principals to address their needs, to hear their needs, and we added those concerns to our current memorandum of understandings with all 4 municipalities. We also have DARE officers in our schools, and DARE stands for Drug Abuse Resistance Education. This is for the 5th graders in our elementary schools. So Westerville PD and Franklin County Sheriff cover all of our elementary schools. Westerville PD's DARE officer has a therapy dog as well, and Franklin County Sheriff is currently training a puppy to eventually become a therapy dog as well. So again, we're folding in therapy dog solutions to help our students and staff in times of crises. So in conclusion, since 2019, since Mr. Dorn stood and said amazing things, we've done a lot of work. And we know we have to continue to assess our systems to ensure that they're doing what they're supposed to do, to make sure we're following the advice of our law enforcement and safety experts so that through these ongoing efforts, we continue to make our schools safer and more secure, ensuring that safety remains at the forefront of our priorities. I thank you, and I'm open to any questions.
I'm just wondering, thank you so much, Mr. McElroy. There's nothing more important than keeping students and staff safe. I'm wondering if you can just talk, for those who don't know, a lot of folks in our community are just in maybe one building or no buildings. Can you talk about the secured entries and how we had to reconfigure some of the office areas and stuff, and what that was like? Because I know we had some buildings where you went far into the building before you encountered staff.
Right. So thank you for that question. So there were a few buildings that we definitely had to reconstruct the entry to those buildings. And let's take Blendon Middle School as an example. We had to move that entry point from Blendon from one door to another, right? And office space had to change, but it flowed so much better. And you saw in at the beginning of the presentation, it talked about CPTED, crime prevention through environmental control. That's what it talks about, of moving areas and making it more comfortable for people to find that front door and move the office staff within the building to be easily recognized and easily accessible to those entering the building. Another one that comes to mind to me was Genoa Middle School. We made changes at Genoa, right? And we had to help our families understand the new door to enter. And there were a few others as well, but those are two that come to mind that we did have to make some changes, and we see a huge benefit. And I visit those schools. I talk to front office staff all the time. And it's, you know, they want to be able to see who's coming in. They want to be able to speak to people directly. They didn't want to be further back into the building. So those schools and others who have been able to make those changes.
Yeah, thank you. It's the technology piece of the secured entries is important, but also just that. I remember Hanby Elementary used to come in a back door off of that alley behind Hanby, and you walked all the way up the stairs and then like past several classrooms, and that we actually moved the office.
Right.
So that you just come into the office immediately. And I know that took a lot of refiguring space in buildings and moving some other functions. So that was not an easy thing to do in some buildings, but I think it's really important everyone knows that some of the secured entries piece isn't just about technology, right? It actually required us to rethink how some buildings worked.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I really appreciate this presentation. I know, having been in a lockdown drill myself, dropping off something to my daughter, they were able to track me down too. So I'm just curious about, like, you told us a lot about what we've done and some of the things where we're working on, but looking forward, and I know we've talked a little bit about this, but what are some things that we're thinking about looking forward?
Well, moving forward, we have to continue to focus on fencing around our schools. We have to apply CPTED to our schools and make sure our entrances make sense. We have to focus on determining if we need to add additional cameras in some of our schools. You know, we may have a couple blind spots, so we need to add a camera or two, and things like that. And, you know, sometimes we have to consider some of our cutting edge technology as well. There's other technology that continues to bubble up that may also be beneficial to their district as well.
Thank you.
I actually have a question along those lines. How often are the like the Raptor app and the technology, how often are those like needing updated or changed over?
Excellent question. So Raptor itself will, you know, as any other IT system does, require an update. So if you open your phone and you have the Raptor app, you'll see where it asks that you update the app. And it's just like any other app that you may have. Like, I think my bank asks for an update like every other month, right? But it will ask you to update the app. And I think that's a great question because our staff have to be involved in the use of the app to ensure that they're updating it as they should. So then if it's needed for a drill or for an actual emergency, the app is updated and running properly.
What about some of the other kind of technologies? For example, the security cameras, you know, those tie into an interface. Like how, I guess what I'm trying to get is what's the shelf life of those kinds of things? Like are we having to replace them every so many years because they're outdated?
Again, another excellent question. I don't know the exact shelf life of our cameras, but I think on average, they're in something like 5 to 7 years is my belief.
Okay.
But again, as I stated, we are always having to assess those to make sure that we're investing in the proper systems, that if we're changing a camera out and putting another one in, it still works as it should, so we're not investing in the entire back end as well, right? So myself and Mr. Stifler and his team, we look into these systems to make sure that moving forward, we're investing into the right systems, the right solutions, so when they do expire, when it comes close to shelf life, we're able to replace if needed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have another question. You talked about, excuse me, uninterrupted power supplies. So I know at times we're asked to power down, you know, for the grid during certain times of the year when there's a lot of power that's being used. So are those on generators? Is the uninterrupted power supplies, are those generators, or how are those different than What
So
we-
first of all, don't you love when that power goes out, when you're in the middle of something and then you look up and the power's off, the lights are off, and you can feel the temperature going up? It's just what it is, and it really helps us in terms of efficiencies. But generators are in the majority of our schools, so yes, they are powered.
Okay, thank you. Well,
Thank you.
Thank you so much.